And welcome to the Gampel Effect. I'm Dan Katz, joined alongside by John Harner. From control to chaos, 1 week ago, the UConn Huskies men's basketball team looked like they were about to celebrate another Big East championship. Three straight wins over Villanova's Wildcats, St. John's Red Storm, and Seton Hall on Senior Day put UConn in position to clinch at least a share of the conference title. All they had to do was win the regular season finale against last place 11-19 Marquette. Instead, disaster. Marquette 68, UConn 62. The loss handed St. John's, who won Friday at Seton Hall, the outright Big East regular season title. If UConn had won, the Huskies and Red Storm would have finished 18-2 and shared the crown. Instead, UConn finished 17-3 in conference play and now heads to the men's Big East basketball tournament as the 2 seed. And the defeat also makes it far less likely UConn earns a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. We'll debate more about that later. Then the final seconds turns chaotic to the Marquette game. Head coach Dan Hurley stormed on the court, yelling at referee John Gaffney after a no call on a potential tying layup. Double technical, ejection with 0.4 seconds remaining. Marquette's Chase Ross hits the technical free throws. Game over. Hours later, Val Ackerman hit Dan Hurley's purse. $25,000 later. And instead of hanging a banner, UConn is left asking, what went wrong? And the answer starts with one run in an afternoon where the offense never looked like itself. The game that slipped away, Marquette, again, beat UConn at Pfizer in Milwaukee. UConn struggled offensively all afternoon, shooting 35% from the floor, a putrid 3 of 24 from behind the arc, 16 turnovers, and it was not the championship level basketball the Huskies had played most of the season. UConn came out strong, but let Marquette hang around. They led 35-33 at halftime. UConn shot 1 of 9 from 3. They did have a 23-9 rebounding advantage. Demery and Reed each had 10 points. Nigel James, Big East Freshman of the Year, with 12 points for Marquette. But the game turned early in the second half. Terrace Reed was the focal point of the offense coming out of the break, scoring 6 quick points and at one point out-rebounding the entire Marquette team midway through the first half, but picked up a pivotal third foul with UConn up 43-41 in the second half that flipped the game upside down. So, John, kind of what were your impressions after Reed went to the bench with UConn up 2?
Well, after that, things kind of fell apart right there. You could see it in the first half. Even when he was on the floor, we made a concerted effort to try to get the ball inside, and our guards also made the effort of penetrating and driving to the hoop, and not settling for those outside shots. And as like you said, where were we? 3 of 24 from three. And Mullins did not have one of his greatest games. And he was 4 of 15 from the field. And over his last 4 games, he's been struggling from threes, 2 of 27. And it looks like it's partly, to me, losing, not having his legs in his shot, and also the green light that he has from shooting anywhere on the court. Sometimes this comes back to haunt you, and I definitely feel like this haunted us in the Marquette game. When he was good in the game was when he was actually attacking the rim or pulling up from 15 feet. We went away from that once Reed got out of the game. When Ryba was in the game, we didn't really look for him, and the offense definitely became stagnant.
And one of those players who was stagnant, surprisingly, was AK. 2 points, 0 for 6 from the floor. After the 23-point game against Seton Hall, really carrying them on Senior Day. And what's alarming is that UConn had a week off. They had senior day. They let the emotions dissipate. Now, going into the week, as we mentioned, there were a couple of scenarios that could have gotten UConn the 1 seed in the Big East tournament. A St. John's lost to Seton Hall. Providence 2 wins. Providence was blown out by 20 at Pfizer against Marquette earlier in the week. They're actually winning their first round Big East game right now, though, against Butler. So they may be playing St. John's in the second round, and we'll get to that later. But with your point with Mullins, I think this team has become too reliant on the three-point shooting, particularly in games that they've lost this season. It's been either Reed not available, Reed picking up foul trouble, not hitting from the three-point line, and turnovers. Yes. And, this game against Marquette, another 16 turnovers. That's not championship level basketball. And, not really understanding how UConn couldn't be motivated when they had a chance to be Big East champions, something that eluded them last season. Hurley didn't want Pitino getting 2 in a row. Not only does he get 2 in a row, but he gets 2 in a row outright. St. John started 9-5 on the season, 2-1 in Big East play. Now, Big East has been down this year. And UConn, though, what's really interesting is that you're looking at the season as a whole. They're 27-4. Beginning of the year, I think anyone's signing up for that.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a lot of warts and a lot of cracks, and they're not playing their best basketball right now. And, you look at the point when Reed went to the bench. Marquette went on a 10-plus point run, flipped momentum, took a 55-47 lead, eerily similar to what we saw against Seton Hall in the second half. But UConn didn't have Caravan to pull them out of it. AK hoisted a 3 that he got rim jobbed on, really rocked back and forth and popped out. Those shots were going in at Gampel. But this was really one of the first times all season UConn looked rattled. UConn fought back late. Mullins hit a 3, started a 7-1 run. Free throws cut the deficit to 2. They were down 64-62. They get a defensive stop. And a telltale sign, Caravan grabs the rebound. Demery doesn't come to the ball. We literally waste 3 seconds with 11 seconds remaining in the game. The ball finally gets to Demery. He drives the lane. Ben Gold goes straight up, no foul call, and that's really when chaos ensued. Hurley immediately storming the court, and there were a lot of calls that Hurley was unhappy with throughout the game. He stormed towards John Gaffney, yelling for a foul. He was assessed 2 technicals. And what's interesting to me is that I really feel like Danny has calmed down this season. For Danny.
Yeah, absolutely. This is like the first outburst that I can remember this whole season. He had a few here and there, little ones, but nothing to this level. A couple of years ago, there was every other game he was doing some sort of antics that put him on SportsCenter.
And so the question you have to ask yourself is, yes, he was unhappy about the game. He's unhappy about losing the Big East regular season tournament or a regular season championship. But I think it's bigger picture than that. I think he's very concerned with how the team's playing. Now, Jalen Stewart's been out the last 3 games. Mm-hmm. It's really shortened the bench. It's really been Ryba and Jaden Ross, who's not necessarily scoring, but he's playing well and he's giving good minutes. I'm shocked when I see someone like Malachi Smith being so rattled and frazzled. Almost having that deer in headlights. And for a senior with the experience that he's had, and I know he hasn't gotten the minutes all the time this season, but he was so big for UConn in non-conference play. I don't know what's happened to him.
And coming from Dayton, I mean, they play the style of, the pressing style of basketball where, you're going to feel this pressure constantly just in practice. So it might not be to the level of Big East competition, but you should be well aware of how to handle it. And like you said, he's regressed tremendously since day one, since he stepped on the court. And I really don't know what's going on in between his head right now. So you can't really put him out there, and there's no backup point guard besides him right now on this team. So that's going to become a problem in the postseason.
I mean, he's going to have to play. And Silas as well, for whatever reason, the press has really bothered him, which is surprising with his handle and a lot of careless turnovers.
Yeah.
It's not really the ball pressure that's getting to him. It's just having kind of mental lapses, not anticipating where a player's cutting, being loose with his handle. It's very interesting. And again, I didn't watch Silas that much last year. I liked what I saw and liked what I heard about him. He's really been as advertised, but the one area of his game where he's a little fast and loose is with these turnovers. And when you're facing elite competition, particularly teams that like to pressure, it puts UConn at risk, particularly with Malachi not bringing it of late.
No, exactly. And you look at the teams, look at the games in which we struggled. It's against teams that actually press us or give us a full court ball pressure. And for whatever reason, like we said with Silas, he gets a little loose with the handle. Sometimes he gets sped up and things start to come, the wheels start to fall off a little bit. Um, and right now, I don't know how you can fix that just going into the postseason. That's something you got to work on in the offseason, but hopefully they have I don't know if they're not mentally prepared going into these games, but they got to come in knowing that, expect pressure. Sometimes I feel like they're out there, and that's with all the ball handlers out there. They don't expect to be pressured or to have any defenders on them. And I think they got to get back to the reality that like this is basketball. It's going to be a physical game. Teams are gonna pressure you because that's what the blueprint is right now. That's what's out there. And Danny's got to kind of drive that home there.
No, and to your point, that's the scouting report. You
Yeah.
know, uh, Teams know if you want to beat UConn, they're susceptible to unforced turnovers, and it really hurts. This was probably their worst shooting game of the season.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not like Marquette was playing great defense. And not to take away from Marquette, but this is an 11-19 team. I know they're playing much better basketball of late, but this is not the Marquette team of the past 3 years. When I think back to the Marquette game last year, the ball pressure that they were able to apply, much different last season than we saw this past week against Marquette. But, you got to give him credit. But circling back to Danny, I know he's probably a little embarrassed about what he did.
Hmm.
I can't believe he didn't think he bumped the ref, although that's what he said in his post-game remarks. He
How
yelled
they touch him?
back of his head. It's like watching Carl Anthony Towns of the Knicks. Oh yeah, no, I was it. It's like,
Yeah.
come on, Danny. And big picture, he's lucky he was not suspended. He really is.
Yeah.
And he got off pretty easy with a $25,000 fine. The Big East reviewed the footage. They said they could not confirm physical contact. I think anyone with two eyes could confirm physical
Mhm.
contact. He was fined $25,000. Val Ackerman gave the blanket. We hold our coaches to high standards of sportsmanlike conduct. He did avoid the suspension, but his behavior really demonstrates to me he's concerned about what's going on with the team. And as we mentioned, you don't need to manifest desire when a championship is on the line. I don't care who you're playing. And they came out flat, much like they did. And early start times hadn't been a problem this season, but it definitely was a problem this past Saturday. And as we look, as the loss hurt in the standings, conference awards really showed how strong UConn's roster was this season. We like to nitpick. They're 27-4, 17-3 in the Big East. They finished second. Zuby Ejiofor, as we discussed, was Big East Player of the Year, also unanimous first-team selection. But in a historic moment for UConn basketball, first time in UConn men's basketball history, and you're an elite company if you do that. Silas Demery Jr., Alex Caravan, and Terrace Reed Jr. all were first-team Big East. Solo Ball, who was inconsistent this year, was second-team All Big East. Braylon Mullins, freshman of the year, not freshman of the year, but freshman first team. And Silas Demery, first team All Big East defense. So quite the recognition, not surprising, particularly with the record, with the performance throughout the season, with the expectations. But the team did get the recognition they deserved.
Yeah, they sure did. The only thing that surprised me was Solo Ball getting second team. I had to take a look back at his stats, and I was looking at him. I'm like, he did play well, but not consistently well. Shooting 30% from three. I don't know if that should make you, second team all Big East, but I think it's also the fact that the Big East is down this year, and there isn't really the talent that we had in previous years. So I think Ball definitely benefited from that. But the three first teamers were a no-brainer. They've all played so well this year, and they deserve their accolades.
And and as we're looking back at the season, I think one of the things that makes UConn so dangerous is they don't have a go-to guy. And one night it could be Silas Demery Jr. Next night it could be Alex Caravan. Next night it could be Terrace Reed. It could be Solo Ball. It could be Braylon Mullins. They could beat you in so many different ways. And it goes to selfless basketball. In an era of NIL where it's me, and how much am I getting paid, and my NBA draft status, this team really sacrifices for each other. And that's why, although it feels like doom and gloom, particularly with how they've played in February, particularly the Creighton and Marquette games. But also remember, they beat the Big East champion by 30 points and held them to 19% from the floor. They went to Fog Allen Fieldhouse and won. Not even the 2023-24 Huskies could go in the Fog Allen Fieldhouse and walk away with a win. They beat Florida, who's everyone's darling right now. They beat Illinois, who is a projected 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. They beat BYU at full strength. Now, I know BYU did not have the season they were hoping for, particularly with their $5 million player, AJ DeBonsa.
Yeah. But they're still like, what, a 7-loss team? I mean, it's
well,
still.
they ended up with 10 losses.
Oh, it was 10. Okay.
And I want to say they finished anywhere 10 to 12th in the Big 12 conference this year. So when Richie Saunders went down, who was a key cog in their 3-guard rotation, things really came apart at the seams. But when UConn played BYU was a legit top 10 team.
Yeah.
And I think the committee acknowledges that. Um, I think what's interesting is that this may be the last run for Hurley and Kamani Young and Luke Murray. Syracuse, Adrian Austria was fired. Uh, both Luke Murray and Kamani Young are being mentioned. Do they leave for a Syracuse team? I'm not 100% certain. But it is a job that would have some allure to both of them. I know they're both not the favorites, but they're definitely top four in terms of the running. Um, I know when Danny was flirting with the Lakers, Kamani was coach in waiting, particularly that time of year. So I'm interested to see. And those guys have done so much to resurrect this program.
Hmm.
I think it's easy to forget the doldrums of American athletic conference basketball. UConn had that miracle run, um, winning as a 7 seed in
Yeah.
14. And then the recruiting really went down when they weren't in Big East Conference. You got to love the Christian Vitals of the world. It's still thinking of the Alterique Gilbert and what might have been,
Yeah.
and the Jalen Adams of the world.
Jalen, yep.
But
Wiley, all
yeah,
those guys.
but those guys were not the caliber of player that we've seen ever since James Bouknight arrived on campus, and Danny really got things going and turning things around. So we're spoiled. We are absolutely spoiled as UConn fans. And I think part of the allure of being a blue blood is being spoiled. You know, you
Hmm.
look at you look at Kentucky basketball. Calipari won one national championship. How many times were they knocked out in the first or second round of the tournament? And they were getting all the McDonald's All American
Yeah.
recruits.
Hey, by Shanine Holloway,
Yep,
St. Peter's.
St. Peter's, exactly.
Here we go.
Um, but UConn's in a different class, and the expectations, particularly after last year, and the ability to bring everyone back. And Danny's mentioned that they're a bunch of nice guys. There's not the dog on this team. Like, as great of a UConn Husky as Alex Caravan is, Alex isn't getting in anyone's face.
No.
Alex isn't freaking reading Solo Ball, the Riot Act, after sitting his ass on the bench and coming in and hoisting 3-pointers. Like, where is that leadership coming from? Where is the accountability coming from? And what we saw in the Creighton game and in the Marquette game, that's not UConn basketball. And I don't know, are they bored in the regular season? I'm not certain kind of what's going on. But I think the Big East tournament is going to say a lot about who this team is.
I sure hope so. They got to figure it out and figure it out pretty quickly. Like you said, they need a floor general out there. They need somebody's voice besides Danny's to be saying, "Yo, guys, Solo, you got to go over here. We're switching on every screen. Let's get the ball inside to the big guy. Let's try to get Alex going here." Like you said earlier, we're a very unselfish team, but sometimes I think we need one or two guys just to be like, I am taking over this game, whether it's just for a 4 minute stretch or the next 8 minutes, whatever it may be, and put the team on his back. Like Alton Marquette would have been a great example for Alex to do it again. Like, he did it against Seton Hall, but down the stretch. I mean, you can't have your All-Americans taking two shots in the game or whatever it was. And I think if they can somebody could just step up and just, you don't have to force it either. You just need to step up and recognize the time and the situation where it's like, we need a basket. We need a couple defensive stops. This is my time to shine. So get me the ball, stay out of my way, and let's see what happens. So I would love to see them do that. And then also work on their defense. 3-point defense has been horrendous lately. So if they can tighten that up for the stretch run, I think they could be in a pretty decent shape.
And, looking at what the loss meant, UConn's now the 2 seed in the Big East tournament. The loss likely drops them in the race for the number 1 seed. And all the projections currently have Florida, which I still disagree with. SEC, from a metric standpoint, uh, gets a lot of love. I think they have a lot of good teams, but I don't think there's a great team. And truthfully, I don't even think Florida is a great team. I think Florida is benefiting from playing an SEC that is not as strong as it has been, particularly in the past couple of years. I think if you put Florida in the Big 12, I don't think they win that conference. And I know a lot of experts would beg to differ, but I think Arizona compared to Florida is in a different class. They showed that in the first game of the season. I think if the two of them matched up again, I know Florida would be favored. I would take some shekels and put them on Arizona because I don't think Florida's guards, and I know they've been shooting better from three, and I know how prolific that front court is, but I don't look at their resume and say that is the resume of a number 1 team. From a metric standpoint, from beating teams and blowing them out. They beat Arkansas by 30.
Right.
But guess what? They went to Kentucky, and this Mark Pope team is missing their 2 best players that they paid for in NIL. Their $22 million team, which is going to net them probably a 6 or 7 seed in the NCAA tournament, it is missing a lot of those players that they thought they would have. They only beat them by 8. And again, UConn has not been playing up to their capabilities, but UConn could handle a team like Kentucky. And when your best win is at Vanderbilt,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't see 1 seed. They're going to get it. Now, what's interesting to me is St. John's is currently ranked 13th in the AP poll. So we'll get into this in a little bit in terms of UConn's path, but there's the potential of UConn playing Villanova, who is a quad 1 team, and then playing the AP number 13 team in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I checked, Florida is not playing a top 13 team in any of the teams in the SEC. They're not even playing a top 15 team.
Okay.
Now, they win the SEC tournament, SEC regular champion, SEC regular season champs, SEC tournament champs, hottest team in the country. They'll get the 1 seed. But if Florida slips up and UConn wins the Big East tournament, I think based on their resume, particularly if they play St. John's in the final, they deserve the 1 seed.
Well, it also comes down to like the college football here. Well, what does the head-to-head matchup actually mean? If it actually means nothing, you guys have the same record pretty much. If they'll have one more loss than we do, but we actually have the head-to-head matchup on a neutral court.
They have
And then
2 more losses than we
two
do.
more, 2 more it is. Okay.
They have 6 losses. Now,
So-
yes, they don't have a loss as bad as Creighton or Marquette. And all their losses are against projected NCAA tournament teams.
Yeah.
But they still have 6 losses, and they lost to UConn.
Right. And I kind of agree with you. Like, I don't know how we are so dismissed from that 1 seed already. If we go out and do what you said, we beat Villanova, and then we beat St. John's in Madison Square Garden, where the crowd usually is a pro UConn crowd, but championship night, it might be a 50-50, 60-40 St. John's. So how do you weigh that compared to SEC tournament in wherever down in Atlanta or something it is this year. I'm not sure where it's being played
I
this year.
love it. The committee has said it's not a home game for St. John's, just so they could get quad one wins. But
Right.
before Milwaukee, UConn looked like a lock. Now they'll likely need a deep Big East tournament run. I think they're guaranteed a 2 seed no matter what they do.
Yeah.
Even if they lost to the winner of the Marquette Xavier game, they've done enough, particularly with the group of teams this year. But we're looking 3 games to the Garden Crown. The regular season's over. The focus shifts to the Big East men's basketball tournament at Madison Square Garden. Huskies enter the tournament as the 2 seed, and they're either going to face Marquette or Xavier. That game happens later tonight. It's a fascinating matchup. If it's Marquette, it's an immediate rematch, just week after Marquette shocked UConn and Milwaukee. If it's Xavier, it's Trey Carroll and a team that UConn's beaten by 20 plus both times they played this season. I really want Marquette because I want UConn to face that adversity immediately because Marquette's going to go in with a lot of confidence, and it's an opportunity for a statement game. And for whatever reason, in games that UConn's perceived they should win easily, they haven't this year. But in games where they felt they've needed to rise to the occasion, besides the game at MSG against St. John's, they've done it. So that's what I'm hoping for in that first game. If they get to the semifinal, Villanova is playing the winner of DePaul Georgetown. On paper, it gives the Wildcats an inside track to the semifinal, and it would create another classic UConn Villanova showdown under the bright lights Friday night at Madison Square Garden. Championship game could be, if the bracket holds, most likely opponent waiting for the Huskies is regular season champion St. John's, and that would be the rubber match between UConn and St. John's, the 2 best teams of the Big East, the 2 teams with first team all Big East players, and potentially NCAA tournament seedings on the line. For UConn, the bottom line is the path to the championship probably looks like this: Marquette, Nova, St. John's, 3 games, 3 nights, 3 potentially heavyweight opponents. What are your thoughts? How do you project this Big East tournament to play out?
Well, I think I'm with you. I think Marquette's going to win. I don't know if Carroll's playing tonight too. I know he got injured in his last game, and if he's not there, then I don't think Xavier has a chance. But I'm with you. I agree with you. I think I would rather play Marquette so we can go out there and take it to them, hopefully, like we did with St. John's at home against St. John's. And hopefully that puts us in the right mindset for the rest of the tournament. Go out there, don't take anybody like they're a walkover. Don't treat them like that. We got to go out there knowing that we're going to get the best from everybody. And we got to play up to the intensity that they're going to bring. And I feel like in games which we lose or the games which we struggle, we don't come out with any intensity or we're sleepwalking through the majority of the game. So once we get into the Garden, I like them to come out and kind of take back the Garden almost, make it soar south again, and build off of that. And that would be my mindset and my message to the team if I was Danny at this point.
And I think the way they do that is they do what they did in the St. John's game.
Yeah.
They feature Terrace Reed. This team is a very good shooting team. Saturday was standing.
Mhm.
But play inside out. You gotta feed him because when he's not getting the ball, he's disinterested. He's more inclined to pick up those cheap fouls, particularly when he's frustrated and boxing out. Ryba, there's definitely potential there. We've seen some big moments throughout the season, but he's a freshman and he's playing like a freshman, and he really still needs to grow defensively. I still don't think he's figured out. He's 7 foot.
Yeah,
And, he really should be a force down low. Again, I think if we are fortunate enough to get Marquette, I think we blitz them, and I think we send the message. Uh, Matt Hodge is injured for Villanova, one of their big depth pieces, who gave us fits in Hartford earlier in the season. I don't think Villanova matches up well with us. So I think that would be a game we handle pretty well. And I think St. John's, St. John's is going to come in fired up.
absolutely.
I think the most dangerous game for St. John's is actually the 1-8 game. I don't know if Providence held on. I'm going to have to quickly look at that. They were up by 10 with 6 minutes remaining in that game. But from a talent standpoint, Providence has
They held
already
on.
gotten in the Madison Square Garden. Did they hold on?
Yep.
Okay. So I think Providence could trip St. John's up. Don't think they will, but I think they could give them a game. And St. John's, as great a season as they had, they played a lot of close games. There weren't a lot of blowouts for them. But I would love on Saturday night for it to be UConn St. John's, Patino Hurley. Really, that's the championship of the year. Give St. John's credit for winning the Big East regular season, particularly after their start, particularly without a point guard. I'm still impressed that Patino was able to pull that together. But we will see. So if the bracket holds, we could be looking at one of the most loaded Big East tournament paths for UConn in a couple of years. But this is what March is about. Response. The regular season ended in frustration. One run, one missed possession, one emotional moment on the sideline. But championships aren't decided in Milwaukee. They're decided in March. Now the stage shifts to Madison Square Garden. 3 wins, 3 days, and a chance for UConn to remind everyone who they are. For John Harner, I'm Dan Katz. This is the Gampel Effect, Stores basketball capital of the world.